Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Annie and this is Unity Consciousness. Thank you so much for stopping by today. Today we're going to be discussing the energy that will be prominent this week, beginning today, the 4th of June, and rolling through the weekend. I would like to say hello and thank you to our new subscribers this week, and hello and thank you and welcome back to our subscribers who are returning this week for the energy update. Before we get into specifics, I do want to talk a little bit about the month of June. We have a lot of transitional energy, and the overall outer planet retrograde cycles are going to begin. So what does that mean? In June itself, Pluto is already retrograde. Pluto went retrograde on the 1st of May. However, this month is a big month for the planet of Pluto. It's going to shift back as it moves retrograde. It's going to shift back into Pluto. Shoot back into Capricorn from Aquarius, going from the power of the people then to the destruction of power dynamics relative to top-down authority and just really super dysfunctional top-down authority dynamics. Saturn, which is in Pisces, is going to go retrograde this month as well, and it retrogrades on the 17th and is going to remain retrograde until November 4th. Then we've got planet Neptune, which is also in Pisces, is going to retrograde at the very end of the month on the 30th and going to stay retrograde until the 6th of December. Those are the outer planets. Those outer planets they have a greater effect on the collective. They're also generational planets because their orbits take so long. They have an effect on generations, or they stand for specifics of generations or identified generations past. So, for example, Pluto, putting it into perspective, Pluto has a roughly 248-year orbit cycle. It is, as I mentioned, retrograde and changing signs. So when you've got a planet that has that vast of an orbit cycle, when it changes signs, it's relevant, that's for certain. And then Saturn has got a 29.5-year orbit cycle. And when it goes retrograde, it's going to have an effect on us all, but it's going to be, like I said, an outer planet. So generationally, or as a collective, we're going to feel this more so than specifically to us, unless, of course, it's our Saturn return. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And then Neptune, planet Neptune, which is also in Pisces, that, like I mentioned, it's going to retrograde, and it's got a 165-year orbit cycle. So another dwarf planet that I want to talk about that was recently discovered in the early 2000s is Sedna. And this is a biggie for me. Sedna enters Gemini this month. And there's a slight retrograde that occurs, I believe, in November till next April. But then, and Sedna is moving into the sign of Gemini this month on the 16th. Like I said, it's going to move forward, begin a retrograde cycle, then back out of Gemini, go back into Taurus. Then when it finally moves into Gemini after a retrograde cycle next April, when she's finally in Gemini for the long haul, she stays there till 2067. We're talking about a dwarf planet that has an orbit cycle of 11,400 years. That is significant. When you have that type of energy changing from one sign to another, that's significant. So needless to say, we've got a lot of outer planet collective energy shifts this month. Also, let's talk about Venus. So we'll jump into this week's energy. Venus enters Leo tomorrow, Monday, and is going to stay there till November 2023. This is a very elongated Venus cycle because there's a retrograde in that cycle. As we found out with the Mercury retrograde cycle, that is a personal planet. So there's going to be personal effects relative to the retrograde. So we talk about the collective, it's going to have a collective understanding or shift. A personal planet is a little bit more significant for those that are experiencing personal shifts, not necessarily general outward shifts. I hope I'm making sense here. But needless to say, anytime one of those personal planets makes an aspect, there's a personal, we're going to feel that in some way, depending on where it sits in your chart, in your natal chart. But anyway, let's talk a little bit more about Venus and Leo. What does that mean? Venus and Leo, every time I hear Venus and Leo, I think, isn't love grand, right? Leo is all about taking the stage, or being self-assured and self-centered enough. You don't necessarily need dramatics. You just walk into the room and all eyes are on you. That's Leo energy. It's ruled by the sun, and I gotta tell you, there's a lot of pampering, a lot of extravagance, that's associated with love and relationships when Venus goes into Leo. Now, like I said, on a 5-dimensional level, there's it's confidence in knowing who you are. It's not necessarily egocentric. The ego is integrated, and when the ego is integrated, you really have a good self-assured, self-centered way about yourself. You know who you are. You know what you stand for. You don't need to talk about it. You don't need to have center stage. You just is, right? And on a 3-dimensional level, it can be all about dramatics, for attention, egocentric maneuvering, so that the lights are cast on you. Just a lot of theatrics at the 3D level. Now, Venus and Leo retrograde themes can surround, what and or who we value. Our Mercury retrograde season was defining stability because it was in Taurus. Well, now we're going to take a deep dive on a personal level as to what and or who we value. Very important. Then right after entering Leo, Venus is going to oppose Pluto and Aquarius, and this is intense energy. Anytime you're talking about Pluto, it is, there's intensity, and it relates to power dynamics, that's for sure, where you give power away, that sort of thing. It speaks about the truly imbalances, and where those power imbalances are, that's where the intensity is. You can find it pretty easy. So if you, to root in healthy self-respect and know who you are and what you need without the power plays, so to speak, of outward shows of authority. I don't need to assert myself in a means of authority. I just am, and I'm confident in that. You don't have to take it any further. You don't have to keep upping the ante or passing that baton, as we spoke about before. Rooting in the wisdom of love and a healthy self-love and self-value is where it's at now. Stay away from those dramatics. Forget about having to take center stage so that you can be the center of the attention and make your point. It's just not necessary. Be aware and conscious of who you are as an individual and the strengths that you hold within that, and let that carry you forward. Then on Thursday of this week, which is already the 8th of June, Mercury, which is in Taurus, is going to sextile Neptune in Pisces at 27 degrees. This is very important. It's stable, very stable, grounded insight or communications, because Mercury in Taurus, we've now been through that retrograde cycle. We now understand what stability means to us. We've defined it. And now there's going to be communications or insight that highlight compassion relative to belief systems. Pisces in Neptune and Pisces, that's all about belief systems, religions, but just these a lot of insight or massive insight that comes into you that may shift that perspective relative to your belief systems. Have pen and paper handy and jot things down if it comes into you on this day. That would be Thursday. Then next Sunday, we've got 3 energies that are going to happen relatively quickly. As I mentioned, Pluto is going to retrograde back into the sign of Capricorn. And then Pluto is going to trine Mercury, because it's retrograded back into the sign of Capricorn. Then it is going to trine Mercury at 29 degrees of Taurus. Then, right after that, Mercury is going to leave Taurus and move into Gemini. And like I said, we've talked about how Mercury's helped us define stability. And like with Mercury moving into Gemini, it is the sign of its rulership. Mercury loves to be in Gemini. There could be themes, a lot of talking, a lot of sociability. There's a lot of things going on, but maybe not a whole lot of depth to it. That's Mercury in Gemini. But I want to talk more about how Pluto moves from, it's going backwards, it's in its retrograde, and it's going from Aquarius into Capricorn, then it's going to trine Mercury, and then Mercury is going to move into the sign of Gemini. What all that means to me, because when I looked at that energy this morning, when I sat with that energy, I got some pretty interesting download. So I do want to share that. So the Pluto retrograde cycle, with this Pluto retrograde cycle, we are wiser from a stable self-value perspective. We've had a retrograde cycle now since Pluto was in Capricorn, and now that Pluto is retrograde and it's retrograding back into an area of Capricorn that we've already visited, but we're wiser. We are wiser now. We can take the wisdom that we've gained in that Mercury retrograde cycle. Remember, Pluto is going to trine Mercury after it retrogrades, and then Mercury is going to move forward. So now we can take that wisdom and apply it to the Pluto and Capricorn themes to highlight where we can continue to experience top-down authority, power imbalances, so that we can flush that out. Remember, Capricorn is moving into Aquarius for one final retrograde before it goes back into Aquarius for the long haul. There's a brief retrograde, but it's not going to be like this one. And but we are flushing it out now. We are really going to get rid of all of those top-down power imbalances within our lives. And we're smarter now. We can now get to those corners that we couldn't reach before. So this next Sunday's energy is going to help kick off that. And that Pluto retrograde cycle happens for quite some time. I don't think it comes out of Capricorn until next January. The retrograde cycle itself is from now until I think November, if I've got it right in my mind. So anyway, we can now define stability, our own self-worth, without the need to integrate outdated, ineffective, out of balance, fear-based power dynamics. And that to me is so powerful, because remember that the power of powerlessness has an entirely different meaning to us now. We can decide where we agree that we don't want the power. We're going to agree to be powerlessness so that we can have power over a lot of the fear-based antics that have been going on for quite some time. So that's all I have for you this week. Again, a lot of changing energy, a little bit different. This month I see it, there's shifts occurring versus these vast changes that came at us really, really quickly in the month of May, especially that first half of May. Whoo, Lord have mercy. But now we're going to have some of these shifts in consciousness, and these retrograde cycles take time. So there's going to be some time for integration. It won't just be boom, boom, boom. The card, we are using the Light Seers Tarot deck today. This is Chris Ann deck. And the card that jumped out is the Five of Pentacles. Let's take a look at it. Five of Pentacles. This card is all about, as you can see, there's a key for a door in the corner there, and the door has cobwebs around the pentacles. So it does look like she's very distraught, doesn't realize that the key is right there and that she could just walk through that door. What does the card say to us today? It is time to squarely address any feelings about safety and security that have you worried about your well-being. Are you stressed about your finances or health, or feeling left out from the prosperity that others seem to enjoy? To counteract these corrosive energetic states, you are being asked to reclaim your personal power. I love that. Feel your hunger for fierce positivity and seek opportunity in your current circumstances. It is hiding in the shadows. If you've been stagnant for a hot minute, ask yourself if you've been laser focused on the things that are lacking in your life. If fear, self-pity, or helplessness try to dictate your reality, flip the script And remember that against all odds, all oppression, all class barriers, all everything, there is always a chance to move beyond your current limitations. Make the absolute best of your luminous life. You are not locked out from that which you desire. See the keys that will help you get there and choose to open the door. The mantra that goes along with this card is, doors that activate magical opportunities are always opening for me. Doors that activate magical opportunities are always opening for me. Well, thank you so much for stopping by today. Again, thank you to those who are new subscribers, and thank you to those who are returning this week. If you like this video, please do click the like button. If you know someone that can be helped by this video, please do share it with them. If you want to know when videos are being dropped, click the subscribe button, and any comments or suggestions, please post them in the comment section below. I hope you have a fabulous week. Namaste.